Hello and welcome to the demonstrational video of the 2019 Chausson Welcome 630. This is going to be a quicker video than normal. The person that's placed an order for this motorhome has already watched previous videos on this model, but it's a quick overview just to refresh the memory. This is the Fiat based version. I will say that this has not yet been valeted, so it's had all its preparations but has not yet been valeted, so it's on the valeting bay now, just waiting to be done. So we'll go around the outside stuff and then we'll proceed on to the inside. First things first, cab control. So the bonnet release is just here, being Fiat based. The blackout blinds for the side windows are operated by pinching these two together, drawing this across, and there's a magnetic strip on there. Exactly the same operation on the cab. Pinch those two together, draw them across, and there's a little indent there which will allow for the reversing mirror where the camera is mounted. So they draw together, pull across and join together on a magnetic strip with the opposing side over there. And it's exactly the same operation on the side window for the driver's side. Just one thing, when you put these back in, make sure they are clicked in correctly. When you're cornering, the last thing you want is for those to fly open. When you're putting these back, just make sure that they go back straight and you don't crinkle up the concertina blinds. Again, making sure that they go back into position like so. Your diesel fuel is filled here, so you need the key, you need the engine key for that. So moving on to underneath the bonnet then. Okay, so right, with the bonnet lifted up, we have washer fluid. That's where you fill the washer fluid, coolant, brake fluid, oil fill, dipstick just there with the red tab on. If you ever need to jump start this vehicle, then it's done so by putting the black or earth terminal onto this here, and then the red on positive terminal goes onto a little nodule which is underneath this flap here. You just put the key into that little gap, it allows you to lift a plastic flap up, revealing a metal tab, and the positive terminal goes onto there. Okay, so we'll go anti-clockwise around them. First things first, this is where the external shower is plugged into. So you get this hose here. You see it's got a little tab on the end of it, like a little needle there, and that goes into the little slot which is just on there, and you push that in like so, and then there's a collar that pushes forward, and then to release it you push that collar back. That's that collar just there, and that allows you to release it. To get flow from the end of this, you press the trigger on the end like so. This is the exhaust for the gas boiler. So whenever you're using the gas boiler, then you'll get exhaust coming through there, particularly on gas. You'll see steam rising from that. It should have a cover which is just in here, which is a weather cover. Oops. So that'll protect against road debris and excessive wind when it's not in use. So that clips on like there, and then you just push it onto the bottom. But in order for the water boiler to be operational, that cover must be removed. You'll probably see some exhaust coming here. That's from the diesel heater. So I've switched the diesel heater on, and that's operational. It's normal to see the exhaust coming out of there, so it's nothing to worry about. The mains electric comes in here, so to release that mains plug, you press that down and pull on the cable, and that releases it. In here, this is the service locker, so I've opened that up so we can see inside here. We have a bank of 12 volt fuses, so all the 12 volt appliances inside the motorhome will have their own fuse. So you can probably see there they're labelled up. So like for example there, the water pump will have its own fuse. So if you get a problem with a 12 volt appliance, that's the first port of call to try and get things sorted out. The next one along to that is the main circuit breaker. So that will trip If you've got an appliance plugged in and it becomes faulty, that's where it will trip. So you can test that you've got a main supply coming into the motorhome by pressing that test button there, and that will flip this fuse down here. Those are the actual fuses. So as I say, that's a safety circuit breaker if there's a problem with the main supply, if you get a short circuit. So that's your fuses dealt with. The next one along is your water tank. So the way you fill this is you pull this nozzle across like so, unscrew the cap, put a hose pipe into the end of this, and then just simply fill until it pours out. You can actually see, being slightly opaque, the tank, you can actually see the level if you've got the right light. This is just access into the tank if you should ever need to clean it or need access into it. You can actually, as per this sticker here, drain this tank down to a mini level, so it'll drain it down to 20 litres, which is equates to 20 kilos, and you do that by adjusting this lever here. So if you pull it up to the top like so, you can probably see water's escaping here. That will drain it down to its mini level, 20 litres. When it's in that position horizontally, then that will allow you to fill the tank fully. To fully drain down this tank, there is a tube on the underside, as denoted by this sticker here, and I'll try and get the camera on that for you. It is right, so it's that there, and that's actually got a tap on the end of it. So that white block that I showed you there, that's a tap to fully drain down the freshwater tank. Very important that you drain down all of the water out of the motorhome in winter. In freezing conditions, if water is left in the motorhome in any capacity, it can expand, crack the pipes and any of the tanks. So there's 3 drain down points. You've got your boiler, which is inside, and I'll show you that when we come to it. Your fresh water, which is just underneath on that tap which I just showed you, and obviously your wastewater, which we'll come to in just a second. So moving on around the motorhome then, we've got access to the garage here. The shelves, you can actually adjust those shelves up and down, and there's a retention clip there. So you've just got access to the garage from both sides. The reversing camera is mounted just up there on the top brake light, so just make sure that that's kept clean. Obviously you don't want your vision being distorted for reversing. Access to the garage in here, we have the puncher repair kit. So if you're unlucky enough to get a puncher, that's your first port of call. There's a towing guy just there, so that screws into the front bumper. The jack, wheel brace and toolkit is there, and there's also some levelling jacks as well. You've got a 12 volt and a main socket in here, and it's also illuminated via this light. There's access through into the garage from your living quarters, which is via this sliding door here, and you've also got a heated port from the heater which we have running. So further on then, this is the access to the toilet cassette. So if you need to empty the cassette, this is where it's done. It's done so by lifting up this lever here, pulling the cassette out, which would then in theory be full of toilet waste. To drain this, you extend that nozzle, take the cap off the end by unscrewing it, turn the whole thing upside down so this is at the bottom, and then the liquid will pour away, so the toilet waste will pour away. As you're doing so, press this button in, it will let air in as the liquid is flowing out to stop it glugging. To prepare the cassette again for use, just slide this back, open up the blade valve, and then you can put the chemical into this, so the blue or green chemical, whichever way you want to do it, and then just line it with a little bit of water into the bottom. You can swill it before you add the chemical, and then it's fully cleaned. But before you put the cassette back in, make sure that the blade is closed and that valve is facing this way like so. This has wheels on it so that you can wheel it over to the disposal point, and it has an extension handle, and you just pull this handle out here and it has a longer handle on it so you can wheel it over to the disposal point. When you put the cassette back in, just make sure it looks like this, and that little handle is in its little receptacle port there to keep the cassette in position. As denoted by this sticker here, that's where the waste point is, so your wastewater, everything that goes down the sink or the shower, ends up in a waste tank. that's housed underneath the motorhome, and you can see there's a handle. You pull that towards you to open the valve and push it forward to close it. The wastewater then drains from this pipe here. So if you work it out, when you're driving over the waste disposal points on the sites, generally speaking, it's like a cattle grid where you just drive over it. It's directly behind your rear axle, so you know where to line up if you're doing so via your mirrors. It also has a barbecue point, this motorhome, and that's where you would gain access to the gas. So there is a little tube, a brass tube that's required. It's called a bayonet fitting that pushes into the end of this, and then your hose attaches to that fitment and goes off and curls off and goes off to your barbecue or heater or whatever gas appliance you want to use outside. This is a tap which switches the supply on and off. Your gas locker is just next to that, and it'll only take one gas bottle this because you're using your diesel to heat the motorhome. So you've got an inline regulator here, and it'll need a flexible, what's called a pigtail hose that connects to the end of that. I've actually got one of those, so on the day I can supply you with one of those to get you set up for your gas. This model does actually have an awning. We do have a separate video on our YouTube channel which shows you how to operate the awning. I'll include that in the description. Okay, so moving on to the motorhome inside. These seats here will also convert into a forward-facing seat-belted seat. So the way that you do that is you give this dial here a quarter of a turn after taking these cushions off. Give this dial here a quarter of a turn, and it lifts up a back plate which gives you the seat-belted seat. I'll just do that now for demonstration purposes. So once you remove the cushions, it reveals this back plate here. So a quarter of a turn on here, while lifting up this will reveal the backrest for the seat-belted seat. Okay, so that's your seat-belted seat. You've got your fastening here and your seat belt. You just replace those cushions, one on the backrest, one on the base, and that gives you your seat-belted seat. Exactly the same operation on the other side, removing the cushions and replacing them once you've lifted up the backrest. Underneath this section here is where the boiler is. So this directly corresponds to the vent which I showed you outside. There's a flap here. You can just pull that across if you want to, just to make it neater when it's in its lounge position. But obviously remove that when there's a passenger on the seat-belted seat. Under here, apologies for the noise, we've got the heater going. Under here we have the boiler. Okay, so to drain that boiler down, it's done via this tab here. In the vertical position as it is now, that is open. In the horizontal position, like so, that's closed. So that will allow you to retain the water in the boiler. So it must look like that if you're using the boiler, and you must bleed all the air out of that boiler by switching on your water pump and allowing water to flow through your taps until you get a pure flow of water. Next to that is the charger, so that's charging your leisure battery, and you know that it's operational because there's a red light illuminated there. The controls for the boiler are on the front via these two switches here. So there's two of those. One is for electric, so if you're heating the water on electric, then you've got 1 kilowatt in it's a rocker switch. This, you've got 1 kilowatt in the upper position, middle is off, bottom is 2 kilowatts, and then the gas is operated via this bottom switch here. So you've got two temperatures, 50 or 70. I would recommend that you just leave it on 70 and then mix it with the cold water, so you've got a lot of warm water. When you switch that on, there's a warning to tell you that it's not ignited, should it not ignite. Obviously when you first put your gas on, it won't ignite because you've got to draw the gas through the pipework and eventually get to the boiler and it'll ignite. So if this red light comes on, it will never ignite. That's it, it's failed. You've got to then switch it off, wait for the red light to go out, and then try again. You may need to do that 3 or 4 times once you've first connected your gas through. It's called purging the system, and you're waiting for a pure flow of gas to get through to the boiler to allow it to ignite. You can run that on gas and electric together. Obviously it'll give you a better kilowatt output. Okay, so this motorhome incorporates captain's chairs on both sides to swivel those seats around. It's a little lever here on the base of the seat, so it's this here. Pull that to the side and that'll allow you to swivel the seat. You do have to go forward and back a little bit sometimes to get it to go all the way around. As you can see, that's the captain's chair, and that's exactly the same on the driver's side. Okay. The table is a leaf table, so you can extend that. It'll also move forwards and sideways to allow you to position the table in the most comfortable way. Just under the scatter cushions here, we've got what's called cargo nets. So they are designed to, for when the beds come down, there's little anchor points on the roof there and on the inside of the mattress just tucked away. So they will provide a safety net if you've got maybe young children in these beds and you don't want them to fall out. Okay, so moving on to the lowering and heightening of the beds. So you've got two single beds that can be independently dropped down to gain access to them. In order for those to work, you do need a little key inside this. So that's a safety key there. It must be in the horizontal position like that. Should the bed fail or the battery go flat and you need to elevate the bed without the use of the electric, you can take this cowl off here. It will reveal the motor, which has like an Allen key fitting on the front of it, and that will allow you to wind the bed up and down. Now there should be a winder that comes with this. I'll ensure that that's present on collection. And then to draw the beds up and down from the stowed position, it's these buttons here. So you can see there, I'm pressing that button, it's dropping the beds independently of one another, there being two switches. As you can see, that's going to end up filing on the table. There's a separate switch for the table which draws the table up and down, so that allows you to lower the table. You can actually make the lower section into a bed by folding the table over. I think it does actually require additional cushions. We've had the discussion with the customer that's actually ordered this and they're only going to use it as a two-berth, so you could actually still make that into a smaller bed using the backrests for the cushions. So to put those back up, it's just a reverse of what we've already done, and as they go back up, the lights come on underneath. Okay, so next to the main entrance door here, we have the control panel. This is the heater, so it couldn't be any more straightforward. You're just basically turning this around to change the temperature that you want it to be set at. It tells you that it's operational via this green light, and if you turn it all the way to 0, it switches off, as you can see. When you first start that up, it will flicker the lights because it's drawing quite a lot of amperage when it first starts up. Nothing to be worried about, it's just perfectly normal. Okay, so that's straightforward using a dial. There's a thermostat there for the heating, so that's where it senses its temperature. Okay, next to that we have the main control panel, so on and off, basically switches the motorhome on and off. Your lights, basically on this, you need both of those switched on. The charger won't work without that blue light illuminated. That's your water pump, so that will pump all the water from the freshwater tank through all the pipe work, fill up the boiler, and eventually out of your tap. You do need to wait until you get a pure flow of tap coming out of your hot water until the boiler is full. There's no point switching your boiler on unless you've got a pure flow of water coming out of that tap, otherwise you're just heating thin air in the boiler. This button here tells you about your leisure battery condition. You can see it's got a picture of the little motorhome. The one next to it tells you about your engine battery. So you can see as that's illuminating, that's an indication on your battery condition. That is for the freshwater, not deadly accurate. They really only read sort of 25, 50, 75 full and empty, but it gives you a quick fix on where you're at with your water. If the wastewater is full, that little light next to there will illuminate. This is telling you that we are connected to mains. The top one is redundant. That's really if you're connecting separate batteries. And then you can adjust the brightness of this control panel via this switch here. If you keep a long press on there, it'll stop this from being so bright that if you're in bed, it's a distraction. Next to that, we've got the fridge freezer. So freezer at the top, fridge underneath. To switch that on, it's a long press on that button there. Okay, and then this button here allows you to select your power source. So there's 3 power sources: gas, mains electric, and 12 volt. The 12 volt only works off the engine, so it'll only work when the engine is running. Or A. So if the A is illuminated, it will automatically select the most relevant power source. It'll look for electric first, then gas, then 12 volts. So if you leave it in A, in theory, you shouldn't really need to worry about the fridge and where it's picking its power up from. This is a temperature control, so in really cold weather, you don't need the fridge to work very hard. It'll just end up icing up. In really, really hot weather, then obviously set it to the top. The fridge will work harder and keep the contents cool. To switch it off, it's a long press on there. All these are explained in the manual, but as a brief overview, you shouldn't really need to do much more than that. The solar panel regulator is here, so you can see what the amperage or the volts drawn are on that. This is the television aerial, so if you unscrew this here and pull down, that will extend up the aerial, and then you can turn it around. You can also alter the angle that the flat dome on the roof is poised at by twisting this handle here. That is just an amplifier for the aerial signal, which is on. You can see via that light there. Your television bracket comes out by pressing this lever here, sliding this out, and then if you give this little knob a pull here, it'll allow this to come forward. It's just a bit difficult with one hand. You need 2 hands to do it. So you pull that, it allows that to slide out. You can also adjust the angle via this here, so that allows you to tilt. Okay, so the toilet operation, basically it attaches to the cassette which I showed you outside. This lever here is sliding to and fro, and that opens and closes the blade. So the way to use the toilet is open the blade up, use the toilet, press the flush here, and then re-close the blade once you've used it. Obviously don't have the blade open as you're travelling, otherwise the toilet waste can move around in the bowl, which you don't want. When the cassette's full, as it is through testing, the lights will illuminate here to tell you that it requires emptying. You can actually see down there, when you open up the blade, you'll be able to see the contents, but it's all dyed blue, and obviously the chemical takes care of all the smells, so it's not as bad as you think. Massive wardrobe on this model, absolutely huge, so that's access to that. There's a duckboard here that goes in the shower to protect the plastic shower base. Ladder for the beds. There's original carpets and some carpets that the previous customers left in, and cab mats. You've got hanging space at the top there. And then just access to your shower. It's just a single lever mixer tap. Can't really tell you much about that. Crucially important that when you're draining the motorhome down, open up all your taps. So for winter use, whenever you're draining the motorhome down of water, or whenever you're not going to use it, you don't want stagnant water sitting in the motorhome, open that tap, open up the release tap outside, which I showed you on the outside in that service locker. Also open up this tap. What that's doing is letting air into these taps as the liquid is pouring out of the bottom. I think that's everything that is functional covered. There's a smoke alarm and carbon monoxide sensor fitted just there. I'll be happy to answer any questions that you may have on the day that you collect it. I'm sure you will, but as a main overview of the functions, I think that's everything covered. So that should conclude the video then. Thanks for watching, and I look forward to seeing you on the day that you collect your new motorhome. As I say, if you've got any questions, just gather those together and I'll answer those on the day that you collect, or drop me an email or give me a call. I can answer those prior to collection if you wish. So we look forward to seeing you on the day you collect your lovely new motorhome.